Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today I'm excited to be participating in the Aussie YouTube Hop for the month of October, and our theme this month is a spring Halloween theme using a sketch, which I've inserted coming up for you next. So I can't wait to see how everyone else has interpreted this theme. Don't forget to hop along and see their creations. I'll leave a link in the description box below of the person next to me on the list. Check out her project, like and comment, then go back to the description box to find the person after that and hop along until you get back to my channel. So this is my page. Now, although we are following a sketch, I have deviated slightly from it. I've actually sort of looked at that center bit and the large title and the journaling spot as my main focus. So I'm starting off my Large Delusions journal, and I've just painted the majority of the background black with some black gesso and dried it off. I've got this really cool tree stencil from Stencil Girl, or tree mask, sorry, that I wanted to use. Now, I've always had difficulty using this mask before, but I've been playing around with this technique of mixing colours while I've been sponging for a little while now, and I thought, oh, that might work in this case. So I started off with the colour I wanted my tree to be. I wanted it to be a silhouette, so I used the black. And now all I've done is just put out a whole heap of different coloured blues, ranging from the really deep blue, which is the night up the top, through to some really pale colours. I'm not changing my sponge, I'm just picking up a random assortment of those colours and mixing them as I go. And you get this really sort of cool background happening. Now at the moment it looks quite patchy, but you have to remember I'm taking off the stencil, and that will kind of help blend it all in together. While I was doing this, I thought, oh, I'm going to have to extend it off the page. So I just continued along and extended it off to the edge of the page. And again, I'm just sort of putting on some paint, tapping it out until I'm happy. Random mixing and assortment. It kind of goes from darkest to lightest colours, but there's a bit of variation in between. So you can see where there's sort of some wet patches, but most of the paint, because it is applied rather thinly, has actually dried quite quickly. But you can see it's a really cool effect in the background, and it's something, if I tried to paint it with a paintbrush, I don't think I could have achieved it as well as it has happened here. So I'm going in now with my heat gun to just dry off the background, because I know I want to put in some grass, and I also want to put in a moon. But because I didn't want to sort of paint it in around the tree, I needed to keep the tree mask in place, which is what I'm holding it down just to make sure it doesn't move. To create the grass, I just did exactly the same technique as I did with the blue. So I just put out 3 different colour greens and mixed them together using the same sponge, and then drying it off in between. So it's really, really important when you're using acrylics that if you're happy with it and you are finished, that you dry it off so you've got a permanent layer. So now I've just got this stencil, circle stencil, from this one's from Scrapbook, but any circle would do. You could even just cut out a circle of a piece of paper. You're just making a mask so you can get that nice circular shape. So I'm going in with some sort of whites and blues and a little bit of yellow over the top to create my moon. And when I pull off my mask, you see you've got your beautiful tree, moon behind, and your mixed background. Now, because I did have quite a lot of paint left down my palette, because I didn't know how much I was going to need, I'm going into my journal onto another page, and I'm just using it up. So I'm mixing all the colours, not worrying about what I'm doing, just creating a background that I know I can do something with in the future. I haven't wasted any of my paint because I will use this in some way, shape or form in the future, and it means that I've got a page that's prepared and ready to go. Just going in again and drying it out, because it was applied pretty thinly with the sponge, it wasn't going to take much to dry. So you could see a sneak preview of my title that I had there that I'm going to use, which is a big trick or treat that I got from Kinder Creations. And while I put it down, it really bugged me that the tree wasn't extended to the end of the page. It sort of just stopped. I thought the title might hide that a bit more, but it didn't when I put it down. So it's always good to have a go and try your different elements before you sort of commit to them. So I'm just using some of my black gesso again. I have actually watered it down so it goes on a little bit easier. And I'm just extending out the lines of the tree. and painting over any bits that didn't quite work. So anything that needed repaired, I'm just going back in and changing. It doesn't really matter that the lines at the edge of the page are a bit liney, because it's going to be mostly covered up. It's just to sort of give that impression that the tree is actually extending the whole way across the page. And again, I had some black left over, so I go back to that page and add in the black. So this is what I am imagining my page is going to look like. What I knew I wanted to do was I wanted to create a little character that was going to be doing the trick-or-treating. So I'm starting to draw that out. I'm using it just a circle shape, kind of drawing out some clothing or a bit of a body shape and a rough type skirt. Now this character is sort of inspired by the little creatures, monsters that Little Raven Ink creates. So that really sort of whimsical style illustration and using collage. I decided to use the Jane Davenport eye set to create my eyes. They were a bit wider than the circle, so I was going to compensate that by widening the face as I draw it. For the body, I knew I wanted to have some collage in it, so I'm just using my matte medium and tearing up some vintage paper. This is some vintage, it's actually a German book, I don't know where I got it from. That has this really fragile paper. It tears really, really easily, but it's great sort of collage base because the print on it is actually quite intense, so it comes through most paints that you could put over the top. So I'm just sort of collaging in the shirt of my little creature. I had an idea that I was going to, instead of actually collaging or painting the clothes, I was going to use strips of paper to sort of make that sort of shape. It didn't quite work the way I was intending it to, and that's because I actually decided to use this paper because I wanted to sort of put some of those greens in. I had this beautiful marbled paper that I did for a class I was teaching. This is actually marbled using shaving cream and some of the dilution sprays and shimmer sprays, so it gives you a beautiful impression, but it's on a really thick craft card, so it wasn't gluing down the way I wanted it to, and it just wasn't quite holding the way I wanted it to, so I had to sort of rethink how I was going to do this. So you can see me madly putting down lots and lots of glue. I'm now trying to staple it. It didn't work. I tried to glue it down, that didn't work. So in the end you see me pull it off and I'm just going to sort of staple it together so it kind of stays the way I want it to. And then I'm going to cover the top with a bit of a band. So it gave a bit of dimension to my image. Possibly wasn't the way I was expecting it to go though. Now I'm just going in with some acrylic paint and I'm painting in the face. So I'm using a sort of light green colour. And this is going to be the base. I know I'm going to do some colour pencil work over the top. So the paint I've chosen is from Paper Artsy, and it's a really matte finish. It's actually a chalk paint. So it's got a good tooth for when you want to put some extra colour over the top using colour pencil. It will hold the pencil really nicely. Over the top of the collage, I decided to go for a little bit of orange, because orange and purples, when I think of Halloween, I kind of think orange and purple. I don't know why. It's probably because most of the packaging is that colour, but it kind of just appeals to me. The two colours I don't use very often anyway, so it's good to break them out. One of the things with the Paper Artsy paints is they do have different levels of opacity. So the orange, for example, is actually quite translucent, which is why you can see so much of the collage underneath. So I'm just going in with a light green pencil and kind of sketching out my face details. So you can't really see them on screen, but I drew in a sort of pointy nose that you can see me sort of highlighting now, and some lips. I'm starting off with my darkest colour at the edges of the face and then blending it in with a lighter green, and then I'll go to a lighter green still. So just taking your time to build up the colours till you're happy with how they look. And this takes a little while to do, but it works out in the end. So I'm going in, putting in the lips, using some circular shapes for that, and again going in and putting my sort of highlights on, darker colours, just to pop it out from the back of the page. Now she looks kind of bald at the moment, but I do know that I am going to be sticking a hat over the top of her at the end. So I wasn't too concerned about not extending the colour right up to the top of her head because I knew that would be covered. I just wanted sort of some semblance of shape there. So I'm using the eyes from Jane Davenport as a guide to where I want things to do, putting in some cheeks. And now I'm going in and trying to put some definition onto the clothes. So again, using that darker purple colour and then some oranges and so on to sort of put in some shape to the clothes. I'm also going to go in at some stage with the Stabilo All Pencil just to add a little bit of blackness and shadow to my page as well. Now I'm going in to do the eyes, so using some purples for the eyes to reflect the colours of the shirt that she's got, and a little bit of grey in the pupils, on the whites of the eyes to show a bit of shadow. Excuse me. So this is the Stabilo All Pencil, just to highlight some of the features again and bring them out a little bit more. It does make it look a little bit odd, but it just helps to pop it out from the background. Now I'm a terror for drawing arms, or not so much arms but hands, so I tend to avoid them by having my character have them tucked behind their back. I just find that a really quick trick. And here I am attaching the skirt body to the doll. So I'm just using some double-sided tape. This is a really strong double-sided tape. So it's just extra tacky and it holds something that cardboard skirt was actually quite thick and chunky, so it needed something fairly thick to be able to hold it down. Now because I had the purple out and I knew I wanted to do it some buttons, and I thought, oh, I'll go in and put some extra detail on her skirt too. So I'm just going in and putting random polka dots all over her skirt, which I quite like the effect of. With the skirt and the band, I don't think I actually do it on camera. At the very end, I was taking a photo for the video and it just looked really blocky and it wasn't shaped. So I did actually go in at the end and trim it off a little bit. So you'll see that in the final photos that the skirt looks slightly different to how it looks at the moment. But I actually just go in and shape it a little bit more so it doesn't look like she's got her arms stuck down the inside of her skirt. I don't know what I was thinking when I did that. So this is the hat and the legs that I'm going to use. These are actually printables from Little Raven Ink herself for October. So if you're a part of her Patreon group, she does printables every month and they are amazing. I always print them out onto sticker paper just to make them a lot easier to use. And this month she had these legs and hats, so I thought they'd be really handy to create my little doll for my trick or treat page. So I'm just going in and fussy cutting around it. I'm not too concerned that I haven't cut out everything with the little twirl on her boot. It was very hard to get my scissors in, but I tried my best. If you don't own a pair of the Tim Holtz new haberdashery scissors that he's just brought out, I can highly recommend them for doing paper crafting. They're super sharp, and unlike his original version, which I love, I've got 2 pairs of them, they don't have the serrated edge, so you don't get that really serrated edge when you're cutting papers, particularly fine papers, so you get a nice smooth edge, which I particularly like. So now all I'm doing is going in and putting my final bits and pieces on the page. So you can see me peeling off the back of the stickers. Then I've put that double-sided tape down on my little doll just to make sure that it's nice and firmly stuck to the page, because again it's a little bit more textured than something I usually put into my journal. And then I'm going to go back in over the top with the sticker hat as well. The big title that you can see there is one for a release from last year, 2018, from Kinder Creations, who you'll find on Instagram and on Facebook. It's actually designed for a scrapbook page, but I've never really had a use for it, so it's come into my journal, which I really love how it worked. So now all I'm doing is just scoring the page that overlaps a little bit with the back of my knife and then just pushing it down to make sure that it folds okay. And I did that while the glue was wet, so if it did need to move, it had an opportunity to do that before it was actually stuck to the page. Now I'm just going in and highlighting or shadowing the word just so it stands out from the background a little bit. And when I always shadow on the bottom left-hand corners of my letters, so the light's coming from the top right. And I find if I always shadow from the same way, I tend to get it a lot more consistent. I also decided to shadow the cat. I'm not sure if I'm happy that I did that, but it kind of makes it stand out. I'm going in and just putting a little bit of extra detail onto the body as well. Finally decided I want to outline the skirt, the pleats and the skirt a little bit more, so it's stood out, and just putting a little bit more shadowing around my little character. One of the things that the sketch did have was the large journal title, but it also had a little spot for journaling or for a quote down the bottom. So I decided to look up on Pinterest a little quote for Halloween. Please excuse my hair. And I ended up with "It's just a bunch of hocus pocus," which I quite liked because I used to love that movie. And I'm not being very consistent with my handwriting, just using letters that sort of fit into the page. Now as I was going along, I just needed a little bit more or something else. So on one of the printables from Courtney, she had these gorgeous little pumpkin heads on one of the calendars. So I decided I'd add those in just to add to the trick-or-treating. And I put a little bit of Stabilo or pencil under there just to sort of highlight that it's actually sitting on the ground. And when I did that, I decided to do that for the rest of the grass as well, just to give a little bit of a shadow and an edge to the grass. Excuse me, sorry, I've got a frog in my throat. So that was basically the end of this little page, apart from me going back in and just highlighting that little bit of blue that was green. So here is a close-up of the final pages. It sort of fits in with the theme of Halloween. It kind of follows the sketch, but I really love this, particularly for someone who's not a big Halloween person. So thank you very much for following along with this hop. Please make sure to check out the description box below to check who's next on the hop list. Click on the link and head to their hop list and keep going and see what all the other girls have created, and then you'll finally come back to my page as well at the end. I hope you really enjoy this hop. It's been lots of fun to create. Until next time, bye for now.